We will begin the story of a world in which chaos reigns. People are trying to save themselves in panic. Orange flashes of flame illuminate the cities, like harbingers of imminent disaster. The end of an era has come. From the clouds of smoke and fire, terrible creatures from the dungeons burst forth, which for unknown reasons began to appear all over the world. The monsters from the dungeons spread an ominous aura that filled the air with menace and chaos. The destructive aura quickly spread, affecting all human organs, gradually decomposing the mind and depriving people of humanity. The spectacle was horrific. People were literally turning into living corpses. Screams and despair were heard throughout the world. At the very moment when humanity was on the brink of extinction, and the monsters with their killing aura already seemed invincible, the Awakened appeared, their eyes burning with a fire that became the last ray of hope. The Awakened possess superpowers called skills that give them the strength to face threats, and they have become monster hunters, becoming the last shield between humanity and destruction. The Knight, Awakened, fights the huge monster using his unique skills and successfully wins the battle. His skill is that he is able to create weapons from monsters, which he will use to kill other monsters. He is also able to control their power, but this is not his only skill, but one of many. Suddenly, a huge Cyclops appeared on the horizon, and the system notified the main character that this was a unique monster. Gathering his will into a fist, the young man activates the skill on his previously killed victim and receives a magic sword. The Cyclops doesn't stand on ceremony and strikes, but he didn't think that the Awakened one is not so simple, and will activate his flying step skill and avoid damage from the club. Expecting such a trick from the monster, the young man activates a new skill, Sticky Thread, obtained from killing a giant spider. To avoid the bruiser's sudden attacks, the boy immobilizes him with a web. When completing combat training before the kill, the system informs the Awakened one about receiving new titles. Full of confidence and strength that was boiling inside him, the guy swings with all confidence. "I wonder what kind of sword you'll make," the hero asked with a grin, his eyes filled with hatred and madness. The guy knocked down the bruiser with one deft blow. This fight was just fun for him. The enemy is defeated, as expected from a hero, because the people called him the legendary swordsman, and his name was Toji Nanase. From a young age, the young man, untalented from birth, overcame himself every day. He had to defeat many enemies to protect those dear to him, and in the end, he became the strongest. Reaping the fruits of his triumphant victory, the boy acquires a new skill by absorbing Cyclops, and he receives a sword of impressive size, which emphasizes his title of legendary. When the disaster happened, the guy found himself near one of the centers of otherworldly power. It was then that he first became acquainted with the monsters that began to fill the planet. He was very scared. Fear gripped his whole body, not allowing him to move, not believing that this was happening in reality. All he could do was scream shrilly. The scream was so loud that it blurred the line between reality and fantasy. A bright light poured through the window, illuminating the entire room. The guy finds himself in his bed and realizes that fortunately, it was just a dream. The news reported that several clots of magical energy were discovered in Area X. Only awakened or technically equipped specialists can get rid of them. Suddenly, the main character was called out by his worried little sister. Her name was Miyu. She was worried that her brother was leaving for work early and returning very late. Toji explains to Miyu that he has been very busy lately. In response, his sister threatens that he will not leave the house hungry. The guy looks at his sister running away with inspiration, because only 2 years have passed since they were left alone and almost mired in debt. Nanas's parents are portrayed as a loving and caring couple who provide guidance to their young son. As if radiating all the love in the world, they tell the hero to always be kind to others. After all, no one likes callous people, his parents tell him. The boy enthusiastically catches their every word. His parents were ready to help anyone, even when they themselves needed help. When the hero was still a child, debt collectors came to him and his sister, demanding that they pay off the debts of their deceased parents. They didn't have money to cover their debts. The man in the black suit offered to take his sister to pay off the debts. Toji wasn't happy with that at all. It is unknown what would have happened to Miyu if he had allowed them to take her back then. "I packed you some more lunch," the sister said happily, smiling at the main character. The guy looks at Mia with inspiration, thinking that no matter what, he still follows his parents' advice for his sister's sake. Remembering how hard it was for them to be able to live peacefully now, Toji apologizes to Miyu for everything. "You have nothing to apologize for," said the sister, bustling around the kitchen. "After all, it's because of me that you have to go out of your way." Miyu says regretfully she didn't want such a fate for her brother. "It's not your fault." The guy tried to support the girl, because it was his choice to protect her. Time was ticking. It was time to go to work. Grabbing the lunch that Miyu had carefully packed, Toji was about to leave. In the corner, he notices a kendo training stick. something he used to enjoy. Now is not the time for hobbies, caring for my sister, an unknown threat in the world. If only he could fight monsters on par with hunters, how his life would have changed then. With a light movement, he would cut down the monsters one after another. He would be the savior of the earth. But it doesn't matter, because he doesn't have any outstanding talents. He's an ordinary person. The morning at the office, filled with clerks, the daily routine is diluted by a ringing girl's voice, turning to Nanis for help. A girl in a formal suit beggingly asks a guy to replace her. She knows that he has a difficult fate, but calls on him to show kindness. Toji agrees to replace her. The colleague enthusiastically thanks the guy and leaves. The man sitting at the table knew that Nanis would agree to replace the girl, which he confidently told her. Colleagues discussed that the work that the girl was supposed to do was very dangerous, and she really didn't want to do it. She heard that after a major leak of magical energy, the gates to the dungeon usually open. The main character heard their conversation. It worried him, because the consequences could be irreversible. The hero's thoughts about the fact that the gates don't open so often are interrupted by common sense. He will simply measure the level of magical energy, and everything will be fine. An impatient colleague shouts at the young man, urging him to get in the car immediately, as they are already behind schedule. The men discuss how concentrated magical energy has frozen in front of the gates to the dungeon, turning into a magic stone, and they pay a lot for such stones. Toji thinks that such stones can really bring in a lot of money, but mining them is very dangerous. Despite the high risk, the guy understands that he doesn't really have a choice. He's an ordinary rank-and-file employee. Upon reaching their destination, they discover the huge stone they have been hunting for. A huge hole in the middle of the road was sealed with a blue magic stone. Danger was felt in the air because behind the stone was the gate to the dungeon. The man ordered Nanis to measure the magical energy stored in the stone, and the young man began to follow the order without question. Dressed in a protective suit, the guy complains that he always gets dirty work. The size of the stone was impressive. It looked like a huge iceberg in the middle of the ocean. The mesmerizing energy shook the mind. The guy took out a device that looked like a flashlight and began to measure magical energy. Looking at the measurement results, the guy was surprised. The device showed 1,000 megapascals, which he immediately reported to his colleagues. The man was inspired by this news, repeating after the hero how much magical energy was stored in this stone. This news needs to be reported to the management as soon as possible. The joyful colleagues have already rushed back to the van. The main character didn't care much about such a jackpot. He was glad that everything worked out. All his thoughts were only about the fact that he wanted to go home to his sister. The entire staff rushed back to the office. There had been a good catch today. The driver noticed that the bright sunny day had given way to the darkness of night. Something was wrong. A bright blue crystal suddenly appeared in their path, forcing the driver to maneuver to avoid a collision. The panic in the van grew. They couldn't believe their eyes. The gates to the dungeon swung open. A portal was formed. Its scale was immense. The road was illuminated by its bright flame. People, cars, everyone on the street were sucked into his domain, breaking the gravity of the earth. Fear and screams were heard from everywhere. Toji couldn't believe that they were in the middle of something that could have been avoided. The van in which the main character was located quickly left its usual location and rushed after everyone else into the blue flame. The guy comes to. He is still in the same van. Nothing is visible around. He doesn't understand what happened and where they ended up. Their car found itself in the middle of a huge cave, and they found themselves in another world. Nanis realizes where they are now. The gates have opened after all, and they find themselves in the dungeon. Realizing that they are not monster hunters, the hero understands the situation they are in and needs to get out of there as quickly as possible. A colleague shouts that we need to get out of the car quickly. Outside, a pack of monsters was already waiting for them, who came out to investigate the situation in response to the unknown noise. Having hidden from the eyes of the predators in time, they were horrified by the size of the monsters. They were kobolds, ferocious dogs. With one jump, they destroyed an object unknown to them in the hope of getting a treat. The driver was very upset that his van had come to an end, and his colleague convinced him that he needed to run away before they ended up where the car had been. While running away from the threat, the protagonist reflects that their only hope for salvation has been destroyed. The young man is angry that all the troubles always fall on his head. It's unfair. The boys ran quite far, caught their breath a little, and froze at what they saw in front of them. They were not the only ones who survived after being trapped underground. There were women, men, children, all wondering how to find a way out. They were all sucked into the dungeon too, Nanase reasoned. A terrible picture. Ordinary people ended up in a place teeming with monsters, several times larger than them. A man with glasses asks the crowd if there are any here who know how to fight. Toji's colleagues said that they could defend themselves and fight a little, and they also had weapons with them. The protagonist hears a heavy cough coming from the corner of the shelter. The mother hugs her child worriedly, not understanding at all how to help him cope with his cough. Nanis suggested that the boy's mother put a protective suit on him. He explains that it will make it easier for him to breathe, and his mother fearfully thanks the guy. The boy calls Nanis' brother and asks him to come over. With a smile on his face, the rescued boy sincerely thanks Toji for saving his life. Having received gratitude, the guy understands that he did everything right. The noise and screams interrupt his idyll. Everyone in the shelter is worried. The kobolds found them. They need to run away as quickly as possible to save themselves. Not everyone has the opportunity to leave the scene of the attack. The mother and child are frozen with fear. The main character notices that they will not have time to escape. He makes a strong-willed decision to deal with the monsters, calling on his colleagues to do so, because they said that they know how to fight and that they have weapons. The guy, armed with a device for his work, gave commands to the guys he would distract the monster, and they would finish him off. Without much enthusiasm, his colleagues agree to his adventure. Fear can be seen in their eyes. Gathering his will into a fist, the main character attacks the monster. Having released an immobilizing net from his device, the monster becomes immobilized. All that was left was to kill the huge monster. The guys pounced on him with knives. But Kobold fought for his life and kicked hard, attacking Toji. The colleagues were unable to kill the monster because its strength exceeded theirs several times. Holding back the beast, Nanase asked to finish off the monster right now. The frightened colleagues were frozen with fear. This monster inspired fear with its agility and size. "No, we won't do that. You want to lure us into a trap?" the man said, fear completely overpowering his mind. Discouraged by his colleague's statement, Toji was frozen with fear. While his team was running away and he was in the clutches of a ferocious monster, the hero asked them to come to their senses and help him. Realizing that he had no one else to rely on except himself, the guy had to go one-on-one against Kobold. With a powerful kick, Nanase knocked down the monster. The fight was tough, but he managed to deal with the predator and save his life. All he cared about now was finding a way out of the dungeon. Desperately trying to find a way out, the protagonist discovers that he is being chased by goblins. A huge figure was visible ahead. If he ran to the others now, he would bring trouble to everyone. He needed to think about how to get out of the situation himself. A large ogre with a sharp dagger in front looked menacingly at the guy. 3 goblins, hungry for profit, were waiting for him from behind. There was nowhere to retreat. He was surrounded. A huge monster swung at him. The ogre launched a devastating blow but missed, miraculously saving Nanase's life. Noticing a sword on the floor, he immediately grabbed it. Taking the pose he had learned in kendo classes, the hero was ready for battle, because he had no other choice. The goblin immediately attacked the guy, for which he received a blow to the head with the point of a sword. Toji was glad that he managed to fight back, and he shouted out in exultation that he could do it. Due to his delight, the boy lost his vigilance and did not notice how the second goblin came up from behind and struck him in the side. Having knocked down the hero, the crowd struck him all over his body. "Damn, I knew nothing would come of it," said the beaten guy. As he lost consciousness, the boy wondered if this was all I deserved. Suddenly he remembered for whom he had been trying all this time, and why he was still alive, for his sister. Having come to his senses, Nanis notices something bright and shiny behind the crowd of monsters, resembling a chest. The chest from the rumors of hunters, made of divine silver, was so tempting. No more than 6 such chests were found. It is said that such chests contain dungeon relics, valuable artifacts, and extremely rare weapons. "All or nothing," said the hero, pulling himself together. He risked becoming the owner of the treasure from the chest. He pierced the first goblin he came across with his sword. Ogre was not satisfied with this arrangement, and he swung again to strike his opponent. Toji didn't lose his composure, and threw the just defeated goblin at the huge monster. The goblin hits Org in the face. It wasn't a fatal blow, but it was enough to distract the monster, and the hero was able to slip through to the chest. The chest was large and definitely contained a worthy reward. The guy opens the chest in the hope of salvation. He discovers an old scroll. And that's all. A useless piece of paper, the hero wondered. Hope was rapidly leaving him. The boy fiddled with the scroll for too long, and the ogre dealt a strong blow to his back. As a result, the guy instantly fell down and began to lose consciousness from pain shock. Being on the verge of life and death, he saw his parents, who, as if nothing had happened, smiled at him, telling him that he needed to be kinder to the world. Damn this kindness. I followed my parents' advice all my life, and what did it lead to? The hero was angry. "Hey, you're the treasure of the dungeon." The guy turned to the scroll in a half-delirium. "Then, help me!" He screamed with all his might, begging the mysterious treasure to gain consciousness and respond to his cry for help. The hero's hand reached out to the last ray of hope, to the scroll. "I have to go back," he shouted, encouraging himself, pain gripping his entire body. The org swung to finally finish off the annoying man. The hero thought that the motivation to return to his little sister and protect her was stronger than death. Toji activated the scroll. Magic skill converter activated. Toji Nanase's target recognized. No skills not awakened. Suddenly the voice in the hero's head spoke. The skill will be selected according to the situation. An analysis is carried out. The skill of the magic swordsman is selected. The system analyzed the enemies and activated the corresponding skill. Subject Toji Nanase has awakened, the system concluded, rewarding the hero with armor and the skill he needed in battle. Have I really become a hunter? The hero said, looking at his new image. He could not believe his transformation. Toji felt incredible power inside himself. The monsters nearby felt it too. So now they were afraid of the hero. The treasure granted him the ability to create swords from slain monsters. Kobold was the first to decide to enter into battle with the updated hero. He lunged at the boy, growling loudly. Toji dealt a fatal blow to the monster's head. The goal is Kobold, a unique species. The hero's ability voice spoke again. The magical lycanthrope sword has been created, the voice concluded, showing the ability to create swords in all its glory. The goblins looked with horror at what the hero had done to the monster, realizing that the same fate awaited them. Nanis used the skill stored in the magic sword. It was a flying step. Lightning strikes followed all enemies. The hero easily cut through each one, not giving them time to attack. After finishing off his opponents, he notices that there are several more monsters lurking in the shadows. They can't escape from him, the hero thought as he created a sword from a unique species of goblin. The goblin's magic sword has been created, the voice concluded. The guy got the skill of night vision. Now he could easily see who was hiding in the darkness. The monster scouts did not expect that their location would be revealed. They had to run away while they had the chance. Without further ado, the hero destroyed this bunch of monsters. Well, these creatures are dealt with, the hero concluded. An angry and slow orc attacked the guy from behind, but the hero's reactions were already better than the previous times, and he was able to dodge with ease. Toji counterattacked into the enemy's body, but his muscles were stronger than he expected. He blocked Org's next attack with his magic swords. Attention, the magic sword has broken due to overload. Repairs are required, the voice warned solicitously. The hero didn't need fixing, he had a better idea. From the killed monsters, he quickly created swords. The swords were sent straight to Orga. The monster easily deflected one sword after another. Its thick skin was not so easy to pierce. The monster didn't notice how one of the swords was flying rapidly towards his face. He didn't have enough reaction to block it or dodge it. The tip of the sword entered his left eye, reducing his field of vision. A barrage of swords fell upon the weakened Org. They pierced his arms and legs. The monster screamed in pain. He could not dodge them. You can't keep track of me, one-eyed one, the hero thought with an obvious grin as he crept up behind the monster. Having dealt a strong blow to the enemy's back, he also disappeared. The monster screamed from the pain piercing through his entire body. Org's strength was running out. He could barely stand on his feet. The hero allowed himself to forget about kindness for once, because he was interested in what kind of sword this huge monster would make. With a powerful jerk, he separated his opponent's head from his body. That's all, the hero thought uncertainly, because the barrage of monsters seemed endless. Recovering from the intense battle, the hero is surprised by his strength. He won. The voice suggested creating a sword from Org, to which the guy immediately agreed. The sword was of impressive size. It had a uniqueness of 2 stars, and the guy also received the skill of demonic enhancement. Nanis noted that magical weapons also have a rank, just like hunters. Rocks began to fall from the ceiling of the cave. The dungeon began to collapse due to the defeat of the boss. Toji ran to look for a way out. He didn't want to stay here at all. He notices something with his night vision ability. 2 human figures were visible at the bottom of the cave. One belonged to his colleague who abandoned him to his certain death. The second was their driver. Karma does exist after all, the hero thought. He hoped that at least the mother and son had managed to get out. Now he is absolutely sure that he will see his little sister Mia again. The huge gates illuminated the area. There were people all around. They were rescuing the victims who came out of there and were ready for the attack of uninvited guests. There are 5 kobolds approaching. The girl warned the hunters about the impending threat. The monsters didn't take long to appear. Huge, fanged, they came out in the hope of getting a treat. The monster hunters quickly dealt with the guests. Following them are 2 slimes, the man announced, ordering the hunters to freeze or shock them. Did someone really defeat the boss? But how? No one gave the order. One of the hunters was surprised. It was difficult for them to defeat all the monsters, as there were more and more of them. Hunters, remain calm and do not lose control of the situation. The dispatcher of the Hunter Association, Yoichi Ariaki, tried to calm the worried team. If a monster appears that you can't handle, Lanmei will cover you. Yoichi's ace in the hole, instantly calming the hunters. The hunters met waves of monsters at the gate, and a figure was visible behind them. Her name is Ding Lanmei, and she is the third most powerful huntress in the country. Usually, clearing dungeons happens in the following way, explains Lanmei. First, the professionals deal with the small monsters, and then they fight the boss. And this is what happens if you do everything exactly the opposite. The girl concludes, all the remaining monsters, not wanting to disappear along with the dungeon, run away from there in panic. All qualified hunters know the order. Who is this idiot who violated it? Dean is angry that someone neglected such simple but important rules. The dispatcher says that the offender will be summoned to the association for questioning. Yoichi is indignant. Where is the promised detachment of soldiers? If they delay, then the association will get it again. Suddenly he was informed that the magic stone began to grow rapidly. He is warned that a huge monster will appear any minute. The faster the magic stone grows, the stronger the approaching monster becomes, sometimes stronger than the boss. Hunters, get ready, Yoichi commanded. The group was on alert. Everyone froze in anticipation of a strong monster. Ding Lanmei also prepared to attack in case the hunters were defeated. A huge monster appeared, walking slowly. The hero stopped in bewilderment. He was surprised by the people around him. He had never seen a dungeon being cleared before. Seeing the aggressive crowd with weapons, he realized that they were monster hunters. They were probably just about to enter the dungeon, the guy suggested. Those same mother and son, they were safe and sound. The hero exhaled, because he was so worried about them. They were completely without protection. Surround him, Yoichi suddenly commanded. The hunters began to slowly approach the monster from all sides, giving it less room to maneuver. Don't let him break through the cordon, the hunter shouted to his colleagues. The dispatcher was surprised. He assumed that the monster looked like a golem or a revenant. He learned that the power of this monster exceeded 10,000 megapascals. That means he's no weaker than a mid-level boss. Yoichi was horrified. Having learned this information, the hunters became tense. Bosses in the dungeon rarely gained 5,000 megapascals, and here it was twice as much. The Hunters Association is in a difficult situation. If they fail to defeat the monster, they will have to call for reinforcements. Toji stood in the middle of the street, afraid to move. It seems he began to understand something. The association took him for a monster, and the young man became very tense when he realized this fact. I have 10,000 megapascals. Even 5,000 is enough to instantly kill a person. Why am I so dangerous? Nanase reasoned about his strength. The command to attack was given, and all the hunters rushed into battle. What should I do, thought the frightened hero. If he runs away, then the innocent will suffer. They certainly won't listen to him. One wrong move and they'll finish him off. But if he dies, he will never see or protect his little sister again. It is difficult for a young man to make a decision, because his and other people's lives depend on it. Suddenly his thoughts are interrupted by the voice of the skill system. You are exhausted. The upcoming battle will require significant effort. It is recommended to retreat and deactivate the skill, the voice says. If deactivated, you will return to your normal state to replenish your spent energy, the voice continued. Toji learned that once he was deactivated, it would be impossible to track him down. It was decided to escape and deactivate. Perhaps this was his only option for salvation. He was going to disappear from the hunter's sight. Lanmei noticed his movements and thought he was up to something. Therefore, she decided to act preemptively. Drawing her blade, she rushed into battle. The hero quickly climbed onto the house and began to run away rapidly through it. But Dean didn't want to let go of her prey so easily, and rushed after him. She caught up with the monster, her gaze full of hatred. The girl activated her skill, Kagura's blade, and dealt the first blow. The guy noticed that her blade cut through armor like butter. It was scary to imagine what would have happened if he hadn't dodged it. The movements of the huntress were sharp. Nanase remembered that he had heard about her somewhere. That same swordswoman, Ding Lanmei, her gaze was sharper than her blade. Realizing who the guy was dealing with, he immediately activated his flying step skill, and he began to quickly increase the distance between the girl and him. But she was running on his heels. He decided to make her way more difficult, and kicked a huge concrete slab in her direction. A huge obstacle quickly caught up with her. This trick surprised the huntress, but she was not taken aback. With quick movements of the blade, she easily cuts the slab into several pieces, clearing a path for herself. Yoichi watches the chase and admires Lanmei's skills. The girl delicately descended to the ground. Where did he go? I don't feel his presence anymore. The girl looked around in confusion. The monster escaped, which made Dean very angry. She promised that she would definitely find him to get even. Wounded and exhausted, Toji barely moves as he walks towards his home. The current amount of magical energy is 0. The optimal time to reactivate the skill is 12 hours, the voice tells him. Nanas, on his last breath, bursts into his home and is met by Miyu. Not immediately realizing who had burst into the house, the girl was in confusion. Realizing that it is none other than her brother, she becomes stunned. The hunter's dirty, bloody underwear was soaked in the bathtub. The guy tries to wash it off, and memories of the evening come to mind. He told his sister that he wasn't injured, that it was just an incident at work, that she shouldn't worry, that the blood on his clothes wasn't his. But the hero lied a little because he lost a lot of blood yesterday. However, thanks to the skill, the wounds have already healed. Most likely Miyu will not even know anything. All attempts to wash the clothes were in vain. They will have to be disposed of. Brother girl burst into the bathroom, demanding an explanation. Toji was worried that Miyu would find out that he had obtained the skill. It could be dangerous for her. Wow, when did you manage to become so muscular? You even have abs, the girl said in surprise, touching her brother. The guy didn't even notice the changes in himself. He and his sister concluded that it was a growth spurt. Perhaps we can thank fate for this, the hero thought, playing with his strong body. If I hadn't gained this power, I would never have seen Mia again, he continued his thought, breathing out with relief. Hey, open up. I know you're there. There was a knock on the door shouting. Toji remembered that voice. It was the same collectors who came as a child. They pounded on the door, and somehow they managed to find them with Mia. Nanace ordered his sister to hide, but he himself quickly put on his shirt. Opening the door, a well-dressed man in a white bowler hat was waiting for him behind it, with two guys guarding him on either side. He greeted Toji. Mr. Masaki, what do you need? The boy asked casually. Stop pretending to be a fool. We need to talk about something. Let's go outside. The man didn't stand on ceremony with his manners for long, and got straight to the point. Or do you want to invite us in, Mr. Masaki? Obviously knew Nanasi's sore points, so the hero had to go with them. It was already night outside. The alley was deserted. A strong blow landed on the protagonist's face. Masaki compares Nanase to his late parents, asking if he wants to go see them sooner. Raising his leg for another kick, the man laments that it is wrong to disappear like this, ignoring his debts. Don't you have a penny in your pocket? The collector asked, pressing down on Nanase's face. I really don't have a penny, the guy said, spitting out blood. The man concludes that since there is no choice, they will have to kill him and sell him for organs, and they will take Mia. He has a lot of clients with the right preferences, and it will take him about 10 years to pay off all his debts. Toji is angry. He really was going to force Mia to work for him. Masaki confirms that he cannot do otherwise. The debts must be paid. Monsters are tearing people apart. The world is collapsing, and the only thing that still matters is money, the man said with pathos, delivering another blow to the young man. He recited synonyms for the word money and hit Nanase for each one. The series of blows was unbearable, but soon the man got tired of it. Gathering all his will into a fist, the hero stood up as if nothing had happened. In that case, I will show you that not everything is measured in money, Toji answered with hatred. Mr. Masaki is not so easily intimidated. He sends one of his bodyguards to show the boy where the crayfish hibernate. The guard, without thinking twice, attacks Nanase, but his strength and reaction turned out to be slower, and the main character catches the sword by the tip. Because of you, my life went downhill. The guy's aggression was noticeably gaining strength. And not only mine, Mia got it too, he said with hatred and regret, his aura growing larger. Now you will pay for this with your lives. Toji's cold gaze inspired fear. He instantly transformed into his new appearance. The voice informed him that he had not yet recovered, and that he needed to solve the problem as soon as possible. He had no intention of delaying. These creatures wouldn't live to see tomorrow. Kid, where did you learn to do this? Before he could finish speaking, the guard was silenced by the hero's hand. Not a sound. It would be inconvenient if we disturbed someone, the hero said, holding a sword in one hand and a guard in the other. All that was left for the young bouncer to do was beg for mercy. But Nanas had other plans. With one movement, he smeared the guard across the asphalt, leaving only a bloody stain. The second bouncer was stunned by the hero's cold-bloodedness and aimed to attack. Before he could finish activating his skill, he was immediately divided in two. Having dealt with the bouncers, Toji set his sights on Mr. Masaki. The man was prepared for this outcome. He pulled out a gun. He fired one volley after another in the hope of salvation. However, the hero easily deflected ordinary lead with his swords. Masaki ran out of bullets in his gun. The last weapon, prayers and admission of guilt, came into play. He admits that he was wrong to shake money out of him. When the guy started approaching, the man started begging him not to kill him and offered to pay. I have to take care of my family. I have a daughter growing up, Masaki said, hoping for leniency. Don't you understand that not everything can be solved with money? The hero said in cold blood, swinging his weapon to kill the man. Stop, Masaki shouted. He didn't want to die, but Toji was unwavering. With one blow, he cuts the offender's body into two parts. The threat is eliminated. You get a new title. The voice of ability appeared. It offered the guy to accept or reject the new title. This news interested the tired hero. A new title has been received, Beast. The voice summed up. The new title did not particularly please. Increased critical damage probability. Added skill system. The hero noted that titles give bonuses. He is surprised that he became a beast after finishing off those bastards. However, he understands that this title suits them much better. Miyu obediently follows her brother's order when suddenly a noise is heard in the apartment. The sister came out to the noise. It turned out to be Toji who had returned. He reassured his sister that he was okay, and now they could sleep peacefully. Miyu was very happy that their life was finally getting better. She hugged her brother tightly. Toji felt that he was ready to protect his sister at any cost, because she was all he had left. To keep Miyu from worrying, he decides to keep his abilities a secret. The girl looks at the guy in bewilderment. Now they will have to learn to live again, because with great power comes great responsibility. The morning news showed the bodies of 3 men being found, presumably attacked by a monster. The little sister notices with fear that the murder took place near their house. The hero exhales, learning that this incident was blamed on the monster. Perhaps the culprit of this incident is a creature that was nicknamed Number 1, since no one has ever met anyone equal to it in strength, the news added. Nanis choked on the unexpected sight of himself after all. They had taken him for a monster and even given him a nickname. An expert in the studio reports that this specimen is stronger and more dangerous than Number 9, who led a pack of monsters after destroying Australia. And even Number 13, who captured Artika, is not so dangerous. However, the association has already managed to take some measures against all of them. Toji notes that he can't activate the skill in public. It's better for him to sit quietly and keep a low profile. Miyu shared with her brother that she was scared. Nanis reassured her that he would not harm her. After all, she is under his reliable protection. The sister calmed down. She trusted and would trust him, because he had never let her down. But such a harsh tone, not typical of a hero, surprised her. After a pleasant conversation, it was time for Toji to go to work. There is a resignation letter on the table. The boss looks at him carefully. Nanis thanks the boss for everything and leaves. From today, his new life begins. He was used to giving up because he had no talent, but now he can fight. The boy came to the Hunters Association to get a license to provide him and his sister with a better life. The hero's characteristics improved, which gave him shine in life. The girl at the reception melted, looking at the tall, handsome man. The guy thought something was wrong with him, so he asked if he had something on his face. The girl became embarrassed and hurried to send the guy to register with the association. In the MRI room, the hero was offered to test his abilities. It's been scanned. The results showed that he had one skill, but he was quite atypical than the others. The doctor explained that he had very little energy, thanks to which hunters activate their skills. Toji realized that it was most likely because he used magic, not energy, during fights. The girl asked the guy if he could show her his abilities. Nanis was not happy with this arrangement, because if he activated the skill, the energy would immediately flow out. He tried to explain that this was not the best option. She understood everything, because some people prefer not to talk about their skills, and the nature of some abilities is very difficult to explain. He was asked to wait until the paperwork was ready. It wouldn't take much time, within an hour. The hero thought about what the doctor had said, that the nature of some skills could not be explained, and he wondered if there was someone with the same abilities as him. Suddenly the boy's name was called. The 3 boys looked at Nanase with disdain. It seems the hero recognized them. These were the guys who bullied him at school. The bully grabbed Toji and began to tease him, not believing that he could have abilities. The hero didn't like this. He told Fujita-senpai that it didn't concern him. Fujita was surprised that Nanase had become bolder, but explained to him that any hunter needs connections. So weak, but so much arrogance. We need to put him in his place. The guys united to teach the upstart a lesson. Toji noticed that one of them had the ability to measure energy. The boys surrounded Nanase from all sides, the tension growing. I just want to get a license. You can leave me alone. The irritated hero tried to reason with the offenders. Then apologize like in the good old days. Say that you won't do it again, Fujita said sarcastically. And it only amused him. Toji looked angrily at the blonde guy. The second one didn't like it at all. He didn't like it so much that he attacked the hero, but his ardor was quickly cooled. Nanas threw his senpai at his henchman. The ability voice recommended him to activate the skill, but Toji explained that he shouldn't do that, since this was a normal fight. He wasn't finished with the villain who had tormented him throughout his school years. He stepped on it. Well, go ahead, apologize, and I'll forgive you too, Nanase said mockingly. He understood that the advantage was now on his side. However, the boys did not play by the rules and took out their guns. The hero noticed this. With one jerk, he grabbed the retinue by the throat. I accelerated as fast as I could, and he pinned them against the wall. The boys dropped their weapons. He raised them high above him. It was hard to breathe. They tried to loosen his grip. They were surprised that he was so strong without activating the skill. All Toji could think about was how satisfying it was to kick the asses of those who thought they were invincible and make them feel terrified. "You've become so strong," Fujita said as he rose to his feet. "You started this first," said the hero, throwing the nearly suffocated guys onto the floor. Senpai only became more excited by such impudence. Activating the skill, he decided to teach Toji a lesson. Nanis didn't know if it was a bluff or if he was actually going to use the ability. Fujita was gathering a stream of fire energy into a ball. He was actually using his abilities. The flames raged. Toji was surprised at the stupidity of his senpai for deciding to use the skill in the Hunter Association. The flame was bright. If he used the ability, it would be hard for him, as well as for the whole association. "Attention, the enemy is about to attack you. It is recommended to eliminate the threat immediately." The voice recommended. The hero was thinking about how to knock out the blonde with one blow to stop this. Fujita's friends asked him to stop, because it was very dangerous. He would burn everything down. "Fire to kill, watch and learn," said the distraught Fujita. "What are you doing?" An irritated, unknown voice rang out throughout the corridor. The man scolded the boys for using their skills in a prohibited place. He asked for a senpai license. The offenders ran away with their heels flashing, just to avoid problems. The man asked the hero if everything was okay and apologized for the incident, but it seemed like this guy was familiar to him. The dispatcher recognized Toji, and Nanase remembered Yoichi. They discussed how the local bully was still causing trouble for everyone just like he did at school. "Yoichi Ariaki is a good friend of Nanase's since school days. I'm glad that everything turned out this way," concluded Toji. Ariaki promised to personally hand over the license to his friend. It is almost ready. Yoichi gets burned by the drink. The hero notes that he is just as sensitive to high temperatures as in the old days. The dispatcher congratulates his friend on becoming a hunter. It is difficult for Toji to share his joy. He says that his case is difficult. He himself still does not understand how this happened to him. Yoichi reveals that he wanted to become a hunter himself, but instead joined the ranks of service personnel. He also asks when the hero received his abilities. Nanase replies that it was quite recently, out of the blue. Toji wonders if there is another way to gain skills, such as using items. In his practice, Ariaki does not recall such cases, but he notes that if there are artifacts that can grant abilities, then the class of this hunter will not be lower than legendary. These explanations were enough for the hero. A huge portal in the middle of the field. The hero stood opposite him, about to enter. Before going into the dungeon, they discussed with Yoichi that Toji wanted to go on a solo raid for training, and the dispatcher sent him to the beginner level. Now that he's a hunter, it's time to learn more about his abilities. For starters, a low-ranking dungeon would be ideal, and one without spectators. He entered the dungeon. Inside, it was the same as in many other dungeons. "All conditions for using the bonus have been met," the voice said. Toji asked what the conditions were. The conditions were obtaining at least one title, reaching a certain skill level, the level of magical energy being greater than 90, and the user being alone. It seemed like this skill had a lot of interesting features, so he agreed to apply the bonus without hesitation. Bonus unlocked, training dungeon. A voice sounded. The hero was surprised that it was not a title or an item. The dungeon turned red. Perhaps its rank increased. Nanis heard a loud noise behind him. A huge monster was running towards him. The appearance of the boss at a low level stunned the guy. With huge claws and teeth, the monster was 10 times larger than the hero. Toji activated the skill and rushed towards the monster. He hit him right in the head. Taking out his sword, he laid the monster down in one motion. Thanks to his beast title, he was able to cut the monster's neck with one swing. Large kobold, a more developed representative of the species. "Would you like to create a lycanthrope saber?" the system asked. The hero immediately agreed. Lycanthrope saber, 2 stars, leadership skill. The guy noted that with the help of this skill, he could become the leader of the kobolds. The sword turned out to be heavy. The system suggested placing it in storage. This surprised the hero, because he did not know about such possibilities. By clicking on the cell, the sword disappeared and appeared in the inventory. Clicking on the sword in the inventory, it appeared in the guy's hands again. He noted that the inventory could store 25 swords. He was distracted from studying the inventory by a noise. A horde of monsters came to the noise to deal with the guest. With the help of the new sword, he cut down half of the monsters with one lunge. Fighting them is more difficult than with normal ones. You will have to use the effect of the title to its full potential. He killed everyone, creating a bunch of swords after each death. In his arsenal, he now had 5 lycanthrope swords, 3 sticky swords, and 2 zombie swords, all of which he put into storage. The system detected several identical swords and suggested combining them to make them stronger. The result was a lycanthrope sword with 2 stars, with the flying step skill. Stars determine not only the weapon's rank, but also other key characteristics, rarity, skill, and so on. This information excited Nanase. He decided to raise all weapons to 2 stars. While searching for monsters, he found a huge door and assumed that the dungeon boss was hiding behind it. He opened his arsenal. He had plenty of swords. Considering how strong the monsters were here, he wouldn't deal with the boss quickly. However, this was a great opportunity to try out new swords in battle. He was ready to meet the boss. He walked through the door. A huge knight, the boss of this dungeon, was waiting for him on the throne. The atmosphere of a medieval castle was in the air. The knight, awakened by ancient magic, rose from his throne. The boss of the training dungeon, the Holy Knight of White Light, has appeared before you. The enemy system introduced. Toji became nervous. He didn't expect to see a medieval knight. It was clear that this boss was the complete opposite of the hero in strength. The system noticed that by defeating the knight, the hero would receive a reward. The White Knight drew his sword. He immediately attacked Nanase. They clashed in a fierce battle. The hero used the flying step skill. He began to run around the White Knight, choosing the time for a maneuver. Quickly taking a small sword from his inventory, he aimed to kill the boss in the neck. But he foresaw his attack. He managed to dodge the fatal blow. Visibly nervous, the hero selects a zombie sword from the storage room. The boss went on the attack. With one swing of his sword, the White Knight deals colossal damage. Toji is thrown into the wall by such force. He broke his sword. The hero is surprised by the strength of his opponent. He has never met such bosses before. The system notifies the hero that the enemy has a skill with an anti-demonic effect. His attacks deal more damage to all creatures of darkness. Nanis realizes that he is a creature of darkness, which is why he takes so much damage from the boss. But since the White Knight has a skill, it means that he is one of the unique monsters. If so, now he will not hold back and will bring down all his swords on the boss. The first to go into battle was the Sticky Sword, with the stretching skill. With one swing, the boss cuts through Toji's sword. While the knight was distracted, other swords were also used. The enemy was ready for such antics. All the hero's attempts were in vain. The blades bounced off his armor, and the boy was unable to detect any other weak points on the knight. Toji decides to aim for the enemy's neck to kill him. But no matter how hard he tried, all his attacks were repelled one after another. The guy decides to try to find his unprotected places in order to hit them and weaken the enemy. The voice tells him to use his leadership skill and set a pack of kobolds on the knight. Having jumped far away from the boss, the guy began to cast a spell. He took out the lycanthrope saber he received from the first boss of this dungeon. The hero uses the leadership skill. A pack of kobolds, intoxicated by the ability, surrounded him. He commanded the new pets to attack the boss. The angry but loyal little animals obediently ran to carry out the order. They swarmed around the White Knight, clinging to his neck and legs. Using a flying step, Nanis flew towards the enemy. The enemy was not willing to surrender so quickly. He cut down all the kobolds. However, he did not notice the hero sneaking up from behind the boss's neck was exposed. The guy took out Ogre's cleaver. He used demonic enhancement. No one planned to give in. They entered the fight. Their swords crossed. The forces were equal. The knight's magic began to spread to the hero's sword. The system screamed. The anti-demon effect spread to Ogre's sword. It began to rapidly deteriorate, but Toji didn't care. He is ready to sacrifice his sword just to cut off the knight's head. The chips became stronger and stronger. The sword could not withstand such pressure. Eventually, both swords shattered into small pieces. But the hero still had swords in reserve, but quickly summoned the lycanthrope's sword. And with all his might, he struck the boss. The enemy's head was separated from the body. Due to the effect of the title Beast, the enemy is defeated. Nanase immediately began to create a sword from the defeated enemy. The result was a sword of white light, with 4 stars and the exorcism skill. The chest above the boss's victory did not take long to appear. Dungeon cleared, bonus received, magic energy restored, and healing. Also now the hero has access to a new title, which he has accepted. New title Speedwalker. User's speed has increased several times. Most likely titles change depending on the fighting style. It's time to find out what reward awaits him. An upgrade material, the Exaltation Stone, can raise any sword by 2 levels at once. Considering that rare swords are not easy to obtain, this was a very valuable item. Having cleared the entire dungeon and killed all the bosses, the exit opened. Nanas was satisfied with his results. It was time to finish the training. The hero returned to the association to share the results with his friend. The dispatcher didn't expect to see Toji so quickly. The guy smiled happily as if he had never left. Yoichi tells the guy that usually low-level dungeons take days. The hero himself was surprised that he managed so quickly, so he is counting on a reward. A friend went to find out how much the hunter would receive for clearing the dungeon. To his surprise, the dungeon disappeared and he actually cleared it out in a few hours. The money has been sent. The amount amazed Nanis. A reward of as much as 40,000 for a low-level dungeon was worthy. If he had not gone there alone, he would have had to share with others. But the hunter's ardor did not fade. He planned to clear out another dungeon. Yoichi was greatly discouraged by this statement. Toji began to explain to his friend that he had a special skill, but stopped in time. If the dungeon hadn't mutated, his magical energy wouldn't have been restored, but that information would hardly play into his hands. Instead, he showed that he was in good physical shape and asked to see the list of available dungeons. The dispatcher warned the guy against overexerting himself, but provided a list of dungeons. Nanaz was attracted by something. An unusual plant grew in the dungeon. Yoichi said that healing herbs grow near the entrance to the dungeon, and good rewards are also given for clearing them. If he is lucky, he will be rewarded with a top-level elixir, a universal cure for all diseases. This discovery amazes the guy. He remembers how his sister was recently ill. The illness upsets her a lot, because she really doesn't want to be a burden to her brother. Due to the effects of magical energy, Miyu's condition has worsened greatly, so she barely goes to school. If he could get this elixir, he would be able to cure her. A friend says that this is a very rare find. On the market you can buy one like this for no less than 100 million. But it will be difficult to find it yourself. The desire to help his sister was stronger than anything else. He declared that he wanted to go there right now. Yoichi explains to the guy that the dungeon will only open tomorrow, and he won't be allowed in there alone. This dungeon is located in the center of the city, and it has a very high rank. In order to reduce the risk of emergency situations, hunters do not go alone. According to safety regulations, only a group raid of at least 5 people is possible. This news slightly spoiled Nanasi's plans, because he didn't have any hunters he knew for his squad. The dispatcher made the guy happy by assuring him that he would find him a temporary unit by tomorrow. Hunters often gather squads for temporary raids. He will contact someone. This news inspired the hero. Yoichi advised the guy to go home for now and buy some healing potions on the way at their special store. Reflecting on how surprised his friend was at his speedy return from the dungeon, he noted that he had never seen him like this before. A huge dungeon stood in the middle of the road, surrounded by ambulances, dispatchers, and other hunters. Yoichi said that I would meet my comrades right there, the guy thought, looking around. Crowds of hunters surrounded the dungeon, and interest in it was high. A voice came from behind, addressing Nanase. Several men greeted the boy. The guy with long blonde hair introduced himself. His name was Kavanaugh. The raid mate thanked Toji for joining them, because they were just one member short. Kavanaugh asked if the hero had taken any weapons with him. Otherwise, it would be difficult in the dungeon without them. He showed off his knife, which he had bought in a special shop. The blonde was surprised that the guy preferred close combat. He could have taken a pistol with him. The gun is too expensive, and you need to take a 2-week course to learn how to use it. Nanas assured him that his own strength would be enough, and the blonde did not argue with his comrade. All hunters were notified that the gates were about to open. Kavanaugh suggested moving closer to be among the first to enter. Some of the monster hunters were already in the dungeon, fully prepared. The monsters of this dungeon came running to their noise. With shouts, the hunters rushed into battle. While everyone was busy clearing the way, Nanas's raid stayed behind, watching. He noted that the hunters' resources, such as bullets and energy, were not endless, but they did not stand on ceremony with the monsters. Loosening their grip, goblins crept up behind the guy unnoticed. They knocked him down and started beating him. Toji quickly gathered himself and, holding the blade in his hand, rushed into battle. He quickly chopped off the goblins' heads. He liked his knife. However, without abilities, fighting became much more difficult. He decided that when the limit of his abilities reached its peak, he would use his power without anyone noticing. Kavanaugh praised the hero's skill with weapons. Nanas joked that he can now definitely call himself a monster hunter. The company walked forward through the dungeon, laughing. What recklessness! These idiots have no idea what awaits them ahead. Let them rejoice while they still can. The blonde thought to himself, grinning maliciously. Especially you, Toji Nanase. Kawano continued in his head, clearly admiring his plan. The detachment of hunters moved further and further into the depths of the dungeon. The hero thought about his sister and that he had to get this elixir at any cost. He ran forward, shouting to the team that they needed to hurry so that the monsters wouldn't get to them too. Kavanaugh slows down the hero. He warns the boy that if they rush, they will waste all their strength, just like those who ran ahead, and for the final battle, they will need strength. Nanas's plan didn't work. He wanted to run forward to kill as many monsters as possible and make swords out of them. But it's better not to show his abilities for now. Toji agrees with the blonde, which cannot but please the latter, because everything is going according to his plan. He will easily carry out the order from his superiors. A huge mansion, the entrance to which is guarded by 2 security guards. Our comrade fell into his own trap, asked the man, holding a glass in his hands. Answer, Kavanaugh! He shouted angrily. He was lying on Cobalt. The blonde was kneeling in front of him. He talked about the murder of Masaki and his subordinates. The guy is sure that the killer is Toji Nanase. The man tells Kavanaugh that he has a chance to reach the top and become one of the 4 Fangs, but he must understand what an honor it is. The blonde understands that he must prove that he is worthy of this. The man orders him to restore their reputation and make Toji pay in full for disgracing them. And let him not even think, he began. But before the boss could finish, the monster yawned loudly. This behavior angered the man. He grabbed Kobold by the face, and with one hand he smashed his head. Disappoint me, the angry man finished, turning to the blonde. Kavanaugh knows that this man's orders must be followed, or you will die. For all the Six Fangs, this man's authority is unquestionable. He is revered as a god. The blonde man accidentally came to the association to gather information about Nanase and came to the conclusion that it would be better to kill him in the dungeon, and this raid came at the right time. The guy watches the hero carefully. Meanwhile, Toji was crushing enemies left and right. Even without his skill, he had enough strength and reaction to deal with monsters. Kawano notes that the hero is quite strong, because he managed to take out Masaki's bodyguards, who were also hunters. Judging by the condition, they were cut with a sword. Everything matches up, the blonde summed up. But something didn't add up here. Could a hunter with only physical enhancement really be capable of such a thing? Kavanaugh carefully reviewed all the details of the incident in his head. The raid comrades asked the blonde if they should act according to the instructions, but he replied that everything was still in force, and they had to get rid of Nanase. The guy called the hero. They were heading towards the dungeon boss's door. The team was assembled. The gate led to the level boss. They came here before everyone else. If the others come, they will have to share with them. They decided to go in as soon as possible. The entire squad gathered in the room with the boss. The huge hall greeted the guests with silence. Gradually, it gave way to a roar that spread throughout the entire location. The noise meant the boss was coming. Everyone was ready. Only the hero and the blonde remained calm. You won't be so unperturbed for much longer, Toji, Kavanaugh sneered. Finally, the dungeon boss appeared in front of them. The size of the monster was terrifying. The gargoyle opened its fiery eyes. Welcoming her guests, she shouted loudly throughout the hall. The hero's system informed him that he was facing a unique monster, Warhammer Gargoyle, and added that he needed to be wary of an unknown class skill. Nanis was impressed by the size of the monster. The blonde plans to seal the room and wait until the hero's powers are completely exhausted, and then they will finish him off. Since Toji is not alone here, he cannot use his abilities, so he will have to use a knife. Victory over the monster depends solely on teamwork. Kavanaugh ordered the shields to be raised. The guy uses the reflection skill. The gargoyle attacks him. While the boy distracts the monster with a shield, the squad opens fire on the boss. But the guys quickly realize that bullets are no problem for her. The blonde uses his ice blade skill. He froze the monster's leg, stopping it. Toji immediately rushed to attack the boss. It would be stupid to hit him in the forehead. The hero was trying to determine the monster's weak spot. The gargoyle did not stand on ceremony, and was about to hit with a fireball. The guy noticed this, but he lacked the reaction to dodge. The title of Dodger was received. The system was activated in time. He barely managed to dodge, but he managed to save himself at the last moment. Having caught his breath, the hero thanks his title. Now he understands that they can be obtained without using skills. Meanwhile, the gargoyle had already melted the ice that was holding her. Kavanaugh noted that she did it with the heat of her body. The monster flew up, thus preventing the possibility of her being frozen in ice again. Toji shouted that she should be brought down now and activated the instant adaptation skill. The hero deftly climbed up the wall. In an instant, he was already at the top and trying to bring the monster down. The squad watched this with surprise. The hero reminded that he couldn't cope here alone, and that he needed help. The blonde immediately used the skill. He ordered the rest to shoot at the monster. The bullets still didn't penetrate her skin, but they were a good distraction. The monster maneuvered between the blades and began to descend. Toji managed to bring down the gargoyle. The hero attacked at the right moment. He used the skill of inhuman cruelty and struck. He managed to cut off the monster's hand. With its other hand, the gargoyle swung its hammer. The Warhammer Gargoyle used its skill. The system notified. The hero tensed up. The monster activated the skill of the Queen of Destruction and attacked the guy with all its might. At the last moment, the hero managed to jump back. The destructiveness of her power was felt by the entire castle. Toji noted that it was better not to get into the epicenter of this thing. You clearly wouldn't stay alive. Instant adaptation was using too much energy. The system recommended that he stop using it, but then he would be vulnerable. Nanase asked Kawano to use the Ice Blade skill again, to which he responded that it was a pointless endeavor. Toji asked to trust him. The blonde agreed. The boys gathered and fired another volley at the gargoyle. Bullets bounced off her armor. However, she deflected the ice blades with her tail. Nanase noticed the monster's vulnerability. He swung and ran to attack. The blade flew towards the monster's forehead. Having received a blow to the forehead, the hero understood everything. Last time the gargoyle deflected the blade with its tail, which means that its weak point is ice. Summing up and arming himself with a pair of blades, the guy swung. He finally managed to break through the monster's armor. He immediately delivered the final blow to the heart of the enemy. The gargoyle expected such an attack. From the heat of the monster, the sword began to melt. The blonde shouted that one sword would not be enough. The monster swung his hammer. Toji assured that he could handle it. His magical powers were at their maximum. He will be able to pierce the gargoyle's heart before it melts the ice. The hero plunged the blade straight into the monster's heart. The gargoyle no longer had the strength to resist. The hero knocked down the monster. The squad couldn't believe that the boss was killed. Nanace defeated the Warhammer gargoyle. The door to the chest opened. It contained the reward for the victory. Cavani congratulates the hero on his victory. Toji thanks the entire squad, because without them, he wouldn't have been able to cope alone. The blonde is surprised by his modesty. Everyone agreed to give the treasure chest to the one who tried the hardest, and they would divide the money. The hero was quite satisfied with this outcome, and he immediately approached the chest. Kavanaugh broke into a wicked grin. The blonde and his squad pointed their guns at Nanace. Nanas dodged, escaping death, the bullet only grazing his cheek. Kavanaugh was surprised. He didn't expect such a quick reaction. Anger overwhelmed him. If the system had not warned the hero a second before the shot, he would no longer be alive. How should this be understood? Kawano Toji wondered. Isn't it obvious? The blonde began. You will die here and now, Kavanaugh summed up. The entire squad aimed their weapons at the hero. A hail of shots was aimed at Nanace. The boy dodged them with lightning speed. The situation was difficult. The guy was outraged by his friend's actions. But the problem had to be solved. He applied the skill of instant adaptation. Before he could take a step, the bullet passed right past the guy's leg. He wondered how this was possible. It dawned on him that they had been anticipating his every move. The blonde praises the hero for his unusual physical abilities. However, he will not be able to escape from them, because they have caught prey faster. The words of his comrade made Nanas tense up. It seemed that it would not be so easy for him to escape. A new volley illuminated the dungeon again. The hero was surrounded. Thanks to his speed, he managed to find shelter in the face of a defeated gargoyle. He still didn't understand what caused the blonde's behavior, because even if he killed him, he would still have to answer for what he did. You still haven't gotten it, the comrade grinned. The death of a hunter during a raid is a common occurrence, and he won't even be suspected, he explained. The hero realized that the team had planned to deal with him from the very beginning. The blonde continued to explain that after defeating the boss, the dungeon would collapse. No one would find the body, and all that was left for him to do was write a report about it. The hero was confused, but listened to him attentively. The plan was well thought out by his comrades. Nanas did not calm down. He asked Kavanaugh what he had done to upset him that he so fiercely wanted to kill him. Having reloaded his pistol, the blonde slowly approached the hero. He told Toji that he had a grudge against him the day he killed Masaki. If you had obeyed, you would have lived in peace, but you crossed the path of the Six Fangs, and you will pay for it, the comrade summed up. Now everything became clear to the hero. They were friends of that jacket. It absorbed the magical energy of the dungeon, thereby restoring its strength. The amount of magical energy was approximately 30%. The system recommends that the opponents be eliminated immediately. Kavanaugh's words changed a lot. Toji was surrounded. There was nowhere left to run. The blonde was glad that he could please his boss by killing Nanase. The team's guns were a meter away from the hero. He was filled with rage. Putting aside all emotions, he was charged with energy. With a lightning-fast movement, he thrust the knife under the rib of one of his comrades. The blonde only managed to turn around, clearly surprised by Nanase's speed. Now the hero could breathe a sigh of relief, because all this time he couldn't activate the skill with them. The guy was afraid that he would harm innocent people. If they just wanted to kill him, he would not blame them. However, they were the same as Masaki, people who lost their human dignity and ruined his life, and he does not regret killing him. The red-haired boy was outraged by Nanas's insolence. Holding a machine gun in his hands, he began to shoot the entire magazine straight at the hero. Toji's speed was faster than lead, and he was able to easily dodge bullets as he approached his comrade. The redhead didn't understand how this was possible. It was an inhuman speed that the hero hadn't demonstrated during the fight with the gargoyle. Nanas explained that he gave it his all during the fight, but now he has much more motivation, which gives him incredible strength. The comrade used the reflect skill to reflect the damage that the hero would inflict on him. However, Toji got behind him and struck him in the ribs. The blonde watched their fight and was annoyed that his teammate couldn't defeat Nanas. It's a dummy skill. It can only be used to repel a frontal attack, the hero summed up. The redhead fell dead. The shield did not help him. One blow from behind proved fatal. The second comrade did not appreciate the hero's showing off. He summoned a bunch of small balls, and he used his magnetic field skill, shooting balls like bullets. The balls flew at Nanase, and he had no trouble dodging them. The comrade didn't expect to hit the hero. but it was worth trying. The balls returned to the owner, surrounding him. Thanks to his skill, he made himself a dome of rapidly spinning balls. Unlike the redhead, he had no blind spots, and no matter how fast the hero moved, he was completely safe. Toji agreed. It wasn't that easy to get to his comrade. So he decided to take the strong one. Taking the gargoyle's hammer, he swung at the guy in the dome. The hunter did not expect such a move from the hero. Realizing the hopelessness of the situation, he asked Nancy to stop. But Toji was ruthless. With one blow, he left the guy nothing but a wet spot. The sixes were finished, and they and the blonde were left alone. The hero said that it was too late to beg for mercy, but if he asked nicely, he might have mercy. This statement made Kavanaugh laugh. He never ceased to be amazed at the boy's naivety. Showing a tattoo of 4 fangs, he explained that killing the team would not make him tremble in fear. Nanace understood who he was dealing with. The blonde stated that it is not only the hero who knows how to hide his true power. A huge ice crystal formed above them. They met eyes. Now there will be a decisive battle. Only one of them will come out of the dungeon. Kavanaugh used the ice field ability. A huge crystal flew straight at the hero. He jumped high into the air, dodging the attack. His reaction faster than the blonde's attack. The comrade, intoxicated with his superiority, grinned while Toji was in the air. Ice magic spread throughout the entire dungeon floor, making it impossible to land. Nanis didn't expect such a trick. He managed to land and retreat before the icy bayonets could touch him. He gathered all the energy in his legs and jumped. He managed to push off and fly high. Meanwhile, the floor was already completely covered with icy blades. He caught his knife on the wall under the ceiling. So you can do more than just create spears, he reasoned, turning to Kavanaugh. The blonde mocked the guy, suggesting that he had only woken up yesterday, since he had never met such slow-witted people before. Kavanaugh explained that skills have many uses, and that hunters are the next evolution. Having studied their abilities inside and out, they can expand the range of their application. And since he has learned to create ice swords, he will be able to subjugate the element of ice itself. The blonde snapped his fingers to demonstrate his strength. At that very moment, huge icy hands materialized and flew towards Nanase. They forced him to let go of the knife and break away. Hands tried to grab him. The hero fought back as best he could. While he was struggling, the blonde created hundreds of ice swords. The swords flew straight at Nanase. Without any ground under his feet, it would be difficult to dodge them all. Kavanaugh appreciated the guy's skills. If he hadn't been ordered to kill him, he would have gladly taken him into his squad. The blonde's speeches were driving the hero crazy, and his patience was running out. Toji began his transformation. His comrade was not ready for such a development of events. A huge explosion spread throughout the entire dungeon. The ice shards on the floor, strewn with blades, shattered into pieces after the explosion. Kavanaugh did not understand what happened and where these explosions came from. A dark aura filled his mind. He was in a daze. Anxiety gripped his body. He did not understand what kind of monster was in front of him. The aura was more powerful than that of the dungeon bosses. His hands began to tremble involuntarily. Meanwhile, Toji had already finished his transformation and appeared before the blonde. The hero was in full gear, charged up and ready for battle. Kavanaugh was in shock. The monster called number 101, which was talked about in the news, was in front of him. Nanas was annoyed that he had to use his skill. He didn't want anyone to see this form, but there was no other choice. He repeated the blonde's words that the death of a hunter during a raid was a common occurrence, which meant that his disappearance would not seem strange to anyone. The astonished comrade could not believe that it was Toji Nanase in front of him. He put all the facts together in his head. That Masaki was killed just when number 101 appeared. But he could not have imagined that he would turn out to be a hero. Confused, Kawano couldn't figure out whether Toji was a man or a monster. The hero grinned. He left the decision about his belonging to the blonde, releasing his energy. The aura quickly caught up with its comrade. Nanase's power was poisoning his entire body, and Kawano's abilities weren't enough to neutralize it. The hero thanks the blonde for valuable advice on studying his abilities and expanding their range of applications. He wondered what the effect would be if he concentrated his magical energy. The blonde realized that he had only made his fate worse by giving advice to the hero. He should have silently swatted him. Toji was learning his new skills. He learned to use his energy to bring people to their knees. The blonde was offended he would never allow anyone to put him on his knees. With the last of his strength, he created a huge ice crystal. The energy was weak, but he managed to maintain his magic. He shouted about his belonging to the 4 fangs, that his name was his pride. The hero was surprised that he could still move, despite the influence of his aura. Nanis was not impressed by this performance, and with one swing he destroyed the ice crystal. The blonde was wasting his energy. The jokes were over. The hero went to Kavanaugh, giving him a powerful kick in the stomach, from which the blonde flew back several meters. He understood that all his attempts to attack would be suppressed. It was useless. Having built an ice wall between them, he decides to retreat. Toji was amused by the blonde's attempts to escape from him. When he struck with his sword, he was unable to break through the wall. It was quite thick. Meanwhile, Kavanaugh was making a strategic retreat to report what he had seen to his boss. The world is ruled by cruelty and strength, and if there is someone stronger than you, you will be left a fool. The hero decided to try to create a sword from a killed gargoyle. He created the 4-star Warhammer sword. The hero called out to the blonde. He tells him that they themselves awakened the beast in him. If his group had not arranged a merry life for him, then the monster would have slept peacefully. Nanase used the King of Destruction skill. Using a hammer, he smashed through Kavanaugh's thick wall. Approaching the blonde, the hero reflected on how many lives their team had broken and taken. By killing him, perhaps there will be fewer innocent victims. What an irony! The hunter himself became the prey, the hero summed up, swinging his hammer. Kavanaugh begged the boy to stop. One blow and the head was smashed, leaving behind only a wet spot. The enemy has been defeated. The system offers to accept a new title. By agreeing, Nanis received the title of Slasher, with the bonus being an increase in his stats in one-on-one combat. With all the enemies dealt with, you can focus on your goal of saving your sister. A huge chest stood waiting for its liberator. The hero really hopes that what he needs is waiting for him inside. An elixir of the highest level. After all, only with his help can he cure Mia. Toji looks at the contents of the chest with anticipation. Inside, a well-deserved reward awaited him. It seems that this is not what he expected to see. The reward was a whip. The contents upset the guy, but he was not upset, and decided that he would look for the elixir in a place where medicinal herbs grow. However, he had no idea what to do with the whip. The system told the guy that this is a weapon of subjugation. It allows you to subjugate weaker opponents to your will. The reward turned out to be very worthwhile and useful for future cleanups. After receiving the gift, the dungeon began to collapse. Toji was about to leave, but before that he looked around the battlefield. "Goodbye, Kavanaugh. Nothing personal, but you are a real bastard." The hero said goodbye to his former comrade, and he ran to look for a way out. Near the entrance, a crowd of hunters were discussing their details for clearing the dungeon. The two guys were discussing that the raid was not easy. They were wondering who managed to kill the boss. Nanis managed to transform into human form and leave the dungeon. He looked around at the hunters. There were some who had received serious injuries. The guy from the association ordered everyone who arrived to go back, since the dungeon was closing. And soon the monsters will crawl out, which they will take on themselves. Goblins and zombies crawled out in hopes of salvation. The hunters dealt skillfully with the monsters. 2 kobolds slipped out of the hunter's sight and ran towards the cripples. Scared to death, they fell to the ground. Toji exhaled tiredly. He grabbed a sword that one of the hunters had left behind. With one swing, he cut down all the kobolds, not allowing them to feast on their colleagues, as if nothing had happened. After the massacre, he threw the sword back. The monsters were gone. The dungeon was empty. Gradually, the entrance began to narrow until it disappeared completely. The dispatcher announced that the gates were closed, the perimeter was cordoned off, and all participants in the raid could pick up their rewards at the main office of the Hunters Association. There was a whole line of people waiting for the reward. The hero was surprised that for clearing the dungeon, all participants of the raid receive a reward. Yoichi appeared and explained to the guy that if they only rewarded those who defeated the main boss, their association would be inundated with complaints. Moreover, everyone took part in the fight against the monsters. Continuing the conversation in his friend's office, the dispatcher was glad that the hero had gotten out of the dungeon alive and well. He asked the guy how his first raid in his life went. Nanas recalled the sad events that happened in the dungeon, but Yoichi said that it was hard for him because he separated from the squad at the very beginning. The dispatcher was concerned about their fate. Toji assured that they were most likely okay. They were pretty strong guys. Yoichi told Kawano that he was a brang hunter, an experienced fighter, which is why the newcomer Toji was assigned to him. Nanis was amazed that he was so strong that he could defeat a seasoned hunter. The dispatcher asked his friend if he had any questions or suggestions for him. The only question that interested the hero was whether there were any free apartments nearby, in some well-guarded building, since he was planning to move. Yoichi didn't expect to hear such a question from his friend. After a long day at work, Toji returned home where Miyu was waiting for him. During dinner, Nanasi suggested that his sister move to a safe place so that the bad guys wouldn't find them again. Miyu agreed with her brother. According to Kavanaugh, his entire gang knows that he killed Masaki. If they attack, he will be able to fight them off, but Miyu will not. Yoichi helped him find a wonderful room in the association members' dormitory. But in order to pay for all the expenses, Toji will have to clear even more dungeons during raids. You won't be able to kill many monsters and create swords. He decided to go into the dungeon alone to get a big reward. There were squads of goblins in the dungeon. However, it is not difficult for the hero to deal with them in one fell swoop. Having killed another bunch of goblins, he noticed a much larger enemy ahead. The dungeon boss appeared in front of him. He swung his club at the hero. Toji dodged the attack. He rose high above the monster to attack. With one swing, he deprived the monster of its head. The enemy was defeated, and the dungeon was cleared. A huge snake appeared in front of the hero. Without thinking twice, the guy dealt with her in one fell swoop. The enemy was defeated. One by one, Nanas cleared the dungeons, killing their bosses time after time. Articles began to be written about Toji. The speed of his cleanup was astonishing and was on everyone's lips. Another boss has been defeated. This was already the 5th dungeon in a week. The hero became stronger with each defeated boss. The news of a newbie who was clearing dungeons at supersonic speeds was circulating among the hunters. The two boys were discussing this news and wondering who it could be. Yoichi passed by and heard their conversation. He thought about how his friend's strength was growing, and weak dungeons were no longer causing him any difficulties. He decided to offer the hero to move on to the next stage. Nanas came to the dispatcher for another raid. The friend looked at the hero, considering his proposal. Yoichi greeted the guy and offered to discuss something with him. He asked Toji if he wanted to take the advanced training exam. The dispatcher's offer puzzled the hero. He didn't know that they had something like that. All hunters have their own ranks, like dungeons. The higher your rank, the greater the reward. In addition, he will be able to access more advanced dungeons. The hero did not show much interest in the offer, since the size of the reward did not particularly concern him. But he asked when the exam would be. The friend proudly said that for him at any time, which inspired Nanasi, and he agreed to start working with him right away. A moment later, they were already in front of the entrance to the dungeon that had been awarded D rank 2 days ago. He was chosen to conduct the exam, but the dispatcher emphasized that the guy did not have to clear it all at once. Yoichi will be the examiner, so Toji will need to prove himself in action, so that the dispatcher can evaluate his abilities and decide whether he is worthy of D rank. The hero was surprised by his friend's courage. He would never have thought that he would dare to go down into the dungeon. However, there was magical energy in the dungeon that could be perceived by hunters but not ordinary people. Nanase was worried about his friend. Yoichi reassured the awakened one that with the help of the protective suit developed by the association, he was not afraid of magical energy. Wearing it, he will be able to stay in the dungeon for about 2 hours without any harm to his health. But what about his safety? It will be provided by C-rank guys. The dispatcher had everything under control. The guys got to know each other. The guy with the shotgun was glad to meet the newcomer, especially since he was on everyone's lips. He couldn't wait to find out what skills the hero had. Yoichi encouraged the boy that he could handle everything if he relaxed and didn't screw up too much. The squad entered the dungeon and the exam began. The inside was covered in crystals. The previous dungeon was of a higher rank than this one, but you have to be on your guard. Suddenly a monster appeared in front of them. Nanas quickly got his bearings and activated the title of Savage and Cutthroat. With one blow he cut the monster in half. The squad was delightedly surprised by the hero's reaction. And although Toji couldn't use his abilities, his titles helped him out a lot. Other monsters came running to greet the guests. Yoichi was worried that his friend wouldn't be able to handle 3 reptilians at once. The hero stood in a fighting stance. He was confident in his strength because he thought through every step. Having gathered himself, he went on the offensive. In an instant, only pieces remained of the monsters. The reptilian archer took aim at the guy, but Nanas was ready for this attack too. With one deft movement, he threw his knife. The monster was immediately stunned before it could attack. A clear hit between the monster's eyes killed it instantly. The hero took the knife from the reptilian's carcass. He didn't even sweat. On the contrary, he just warmed up. The squad was in a bit of shock from what they saw. They discussed how the hero dealt with several reptilians and basilisks in one fell swoop. And if they were combined, their strength would be like that of an E-rank dungeon boss. And Nanas managed to kill them easily and single-handedly. Yoichi thought, over the past 2 weeks, he had been surprised more than once by his friend's speed in clearing dungeons, and he kept wondering what skill helped him achieve success. And he came to the conclusion that the hero had no special skill whatsoever. However, his strength and speed were unimaginable. Nanase had come this far with just a simple knife. Another monster was defeated. Toji himself did not expect how easy it would be to clear this dungeon. The boys never ceased to be amazed at the hero's speed and strength. Yoichi decided to ask his friend how he manages to deal with monsters so easily. Suddenly, the dungeon began to rumble. The sensations were comparable to an earthquake, not typical for this place. The blue crystals changed color to purple. Even the dispatcher couldn't understand what was happening. The system notified the hero about the imminent appearance of a new dungeon in this place. The concentration of magical energy is rapidly growing, which will lead to a change in the environment. Something was breaking through from underground. Huge columns began to be erected on the site of what had previously been a wasteland. An impressive statue of a reptilian appeared in the middle of the dungeon. The concentration of magical energy was too high. In anticipation, Toji turned his attention to the squad. Hunters were not affected by the concentration of magical energy, but Yoichi was an ordinary person. Unfortunately, he could not cope with such force and lost consciousness. Nanas rushed to help his friend. With the last of his strength, Yoichi explains to the hero that they need to leave immediately, as a dungeon overlap has occurred. This is a rare occurrence, with only 9 cases recorded worldwide, and the event was an anomaly with unknown causes. The dispatcher's suit won't be able to withstand such a powerful magical effect. Yoichi needs to be pulled out. The defending guys shouted that the exam was cancelled, since Yoichi's life was a priority. Magical monsters began to emerge from underground. The hunters started shooting at them. He made a lot of holes in the monsters, but it didn't work. They easily pulled them in. They were unusual monsters. You can't take them with firearms, you need to use skills. The guy uses the Quagmire skill. Snake-like monsters were summoned from underground. They attacked monsters and immobilized them. The magical monsters were under the power of the Quagmire skill. The guys were glad that they managed to detain them. Unexpectedly, another batch of magical creatures emerged from behind the columns. There were more of them than before, and they were rapidly approaching the detachment. The lizard suddenly appeared above the hero. Toji called the guys for help. A huge carcass fell on their heads, and almost everyone managed to jump back. The creature grabbed 2 hunters and began to swallow them. Nanas didn't have time to do anything in this situation. He only called them. But it was too late. The monster had almost completely swallowed them up. All they could do was scream hysterically. The monster grew larger, fed by the energy of the hunters. His terrible grin foreshadowed big problems for the hero. It dawned on Toji that these were the spirits of the monsters he had destroyed while clearing the dungeon. The system began analyzing the dungeon, concluding that they were in a reptilian tomb. The number of monsters grows exponentially until all the magical energy of the dungeon is exhausted. The hero is advised to clear it or retreat. He didn't really have a choice, since the exit was blocked by monsters. Having transformed, he hoped that Yoichi would be able to hold out. During the fight with Kavanaugh, he learned to control the release of magical energy, which will help him not to harm his friend. A huge shadow monster attacked the hero. Toji grabbed the monster. A huge clot of magical energy was right above him. Rage charged the awakened one. At that very moment, he cut off the head of the monster, of which nothing remained afterwards. The other monsters were surprised by the death of their relative. Since he has to fight the undead, the hero wants to try something. From his storage, he takes out a sword of white light, received from the White Knight. He got into a fighting stance and was ready to attack. The monsters went on the offensive. At the same moment, Nanase activated the sword's ability, Incineration. He moved his sword around the perimeter, a beam of light incinerating every monster that dared to approach. There was no trace left of the undead's magical energy. The hero managed to exterminate most of the monsters. The noise and rumble distracted the guy. The reptilian statue began to crumble. She was filled with the magical energy of the dungeon and took the form of a skeleton. A huge lizard with a sword in its hand appeared in front of the hunter. Before him was the owner of the crypt. These antics no longer impressed the hero. The system has detected a sharp surge in magical energy. The boss released a powerful blast of energy. The guy barely managed to dodge. Having identified the root of all evil, the hero was ready to clear the dungeon. There was little time. He decided to finish off the creature with one blow. Toji unleashed a flurry of blows on the reptilian's leg. The creature's bone was shattered, but it immediately managed to grow back together. The hero was surprised that it didn't work. The monster was immobilized. The boss struck the hero with a powerful jerk. The impact caused an earthquake throughout the entire dungeon. The columns began to collapse. The guy was upset that he was unable to defeat the monster with one blow. The system conducted a report on the enemy. The king of the fallen reptilians was fed by the magical energy of the dungeon. The boss grabbed one of the fallen columns. Swinging, he chose a target to throw. The column flew towards Yoichi. Nanas didn't expect such a trick from the monster. The column hit the target exactly. Toji managed to prevent his friend's death in time. The hero realized that the monster had identified his weakness, and he was not so simple. The guy asked the system to assess his friend's condition and how to save him. The system recommended that Yoichi be taken out of the dungeon as soon as possible to stop the infection process. The hero had only 10 minutes to spare, but that was enough for him. Gathering his strength, Nanase was ready to destroy the monster. The motivation to save his friend energized him. The hunter immediately went on the offensive. He designed his attacks to deal with the problem efficiently and quickly. With one blow, the monster's arm along with its weapon was cut off. With all his might, Toji aimed to deliver the decisive blow. He plunged the sword of light into the monster where its heart should be, and used the ability Radiance. A flurry of light illuminated the dungeon. The monster screamed in pain. Nanas climbed onto his sword that was sticking out of the boss, flew high above the enemy. The hero summoned the sword hammer of war. The monster understood what fate was in store for him. He decided to attack the unconscious Yoichi with his tail. Toji used the skill King of Resolution. The title Cutthroat was activated. A devastating blow from the hammer landed on the reptilian's head. The boss was completely covered in cracks. The body and head were successfully crushed into small pieces. The monster's tail never managed to reach Yoichi, and the dispatcher's life was not in danger except for magical energy. The king of the fallen reptilians is defeated. The concentration of magical energy returns to normal. Having finished with the boss, Nanas immediately ran to his friend. The system suggested creating a sword from the defeated boss. The hero said to create it, and immediately hide it in the inventory. Having placed the dispatcher on his shoulders, he immediately rushed towards the exit. Yoichi managed to wake up when the magic began to stabilize. He could barely see his savior. The dispatcher began to take a closer look. He clearly saw his friend, Toji, but his strength was rapidly leaving him, until eventually he lost consciousness again. The exit was very close. Nanas ran as fast as he could to help his friend. The remnants of the Chudish blocked his path. The hero was angry. He had no time at all. Like annoying flies, the hunter dealt with them in one blow. The monsters only became formless, but that was enough for the hero to continue on his way. He defeated the boss, but he was unable to clear the entire dungeon. Finally, he found a way out of the dungeon. To avoid being recognized, he deactivated his skill before leaving. They ran safely through the exit. A whole association was already waiting for them, with other dispatchers, hunters, and rescue services. Toji was glad that they were sent people to help them. The hero immediately handed his friend over to the rescue team, explaining along the way that the concentration of magical energy in the dungeon had suddenly increased. Without asking any unnecessary questions, the ambulance immediately left with the victim. Finally, Nanas could breathe a sigh of relief. A familiar voice behind the guy caught him by surprise. Turning around, he recognized the legendary huntress May. She asked the guy what happened in the dungeon. Toji was glad that she didn't remember him after their first meeting, explaining along the way that there was an overlap in the dungeon. The information about the imposition made the hunter think, because the level of the dungeon was not high. She also asked where the other hunters who accompanied Yoichi were. Toji sadly told that they were attacked by monsters and the guys died. This news alarmed May. Despite the sad circumstances, she advised the guy to thank fate that he survived. The time for talking was over. Monsters were about to emerge from the dungeon. The huntress commanded the others to prepare for battle. The monsters did not keep them waiting long. The crowd was already making its way through the exit into the dungeon. The guys didn't expect the monsters to come out, because the dungeon hadn't been cleared yet and hadn't collapsed. In one blow, May dealt with a crowd of monsters. She explained to the hunters that the rules of normal dungeons did not apply in this case, so they needed to be on their guard. A couple of monsters broke away from the crowd and flew straight towards the dispatcher's girl. Toji and May noticed these monsters. Nanas was the first to react, cutting through the annoying shadows with his knife. May was amazed at the boy's speed. She appreciated the guy's reaction, but advised him to rest after what he had been through, and it's better to leave the killing of monsters to her. A magical aura surrounded the girl she was preparing to attack. After waiting for the magical shadows to gather together, she gave the command to launch an attack. Activating her Kagura blade skill, she incinerated the monsters one swing at a time. Toji was amazed at her skill and speed. The hunters from the association did not have time to understand what happened. May was very fast. The hero remembered that she used the same skill in the battle with him. That time he tried to escape and didn't really understand anything. But now he could notice that her sword strikes were simply lightning fast. May rushed through the crowd of monsters. The bunch of shadows were incinerated in an instant. The girl uses her aura as a protective field. This technique allows her to get a significant increase in strength and strengthen her defense. The girl finished with all the monsters. This is what a true professional looks like, according to Toji. The guy thought that she was probably stronger than him. This is the level of mastery he wants to strive for. The hunters rushed into the dungeon to continue clearing it, so that it would finally collapse. The audience of this performance was taken aback by how the girl managed to deal with everyone so quickly, as if a hurricane had passed through. Toji came to visit Yoichi in the hospital. The dispatcher gradually came to his senses. The hunter was glad that his friend finally opened his eyes. His happiness knew no bounds. He told his friend that he passed out when they were attacked by monsters. Suddenly, Yoichi remembered something. He asked Nanase what had happened to the boys who had accompanied him. The friend shook his head sadly. This news saddened the dispatcher. Toji assured his friend that he had nothing to blame himself, for no one could have predicted such an outcome. Yoichi also asked what happened to the dungeon. The hero told him that a group of hunters led by May went there and already cleared it out. May remained in the dungeon until its magical energy was completely exhausted. so she most likely managed to destroy all the monsters. As expected from a C-ranked hunter and the pride of Japan, Yoichi concluded. But he still wanted to ask his friend one more thing. How did he manage to get him out of the dungeon? Toji began to explain that 2 hunters were distracting the monsters. The thing is, Yoichi interrupted him. He saw a blurry silhouette in black armor. This silhouette looked like the monster he had encountered recently. Nanase was nervous, realizing where this was all leading. Yoichi didn't delay. He directly asked the hero if he was number 101. The hero was frightened by the fact that his identity had been exposed. Toji gathered his strength. He didn't know what to answer. Having gathered his courage, he finally admitted that he was number 101, and he continued to explain in all sincerity what had happened on the day the first murder took place, and that it was he who had killed Kavanaugh's squad and himself. Yoichi froze at the information that fell on him, but he did not understand his friend's motives. Nanas continued to explain that he had to do it because the debt collectors were giving him and his sister no peace, threatening to take her away, and he simply had no other choice. The dispatcher wanted to know everything and asked his friend to tell him everything in more detail. After Toji's story, Yoichi realized that his friend had gained his power in the dungeon, and then unleashed it on the creditors and their cronies. Nanas asked his friend for forgiveness for keeping this information from him for so long. The dispatcher reassured the guy. It wasn't his fault, he just needed to be a little more attentive. Yoichi showed understanding for his friend, because it wasn't easy for him. So many difficulties fell on his head. He simply dealt with them as best he could. However, he asked the hunter what he would do next. Toji would like to keep his identity a secret and continue working as a hunter to provide him and Miyu with everything they need. Others will hardly understand that he is not a monster, but a human. Henceforth, he will try not to cause trouble for Yoichi anymore. The dispatcher appreciated his friend's plans, because people with magical powers pose a huge threat to the entire world. If the full truth about the nature of his abilities came to light, he would not be able to protect it. Yoichi advised the hunter to refrain from killing. Even in self-defense, there is a limit to everything. Nanas heard his friend's instructions. The dispatcher was already quite cheerful, and he had a lot of work. He was ready to return to duty. Toji called his friend. A sincere smile spread in gratitude. He was glad that he had finally shared his secret with him. Yoichi accepted his friend's gratitude with understanding. He also wanted to help him. New day. The dispatcher provided a list of available dungeons that can be cleared alone, so that the hero does not have to give away his secret. If he needs anything else, Yoichi is ready to help. On the way, Nanase met a puzzled girl. She and the boy next to her asked if he was Toji Nanase. The hero answered positively, asking a counter-question about who they would be. The couple was inspired. They did not expect to meet him, so they insisted on an interview, handing Nanase the phone. The news on the smartphone shocked the hero. The front pages featured his photo and his recent achievements of rising through the ranks and setting a record for clearing dungeons. Toji didn't understand what it all meant. The girl explained that they wrote an article about his exploits. It takes ordinary people at least 3 years to grow to this level. They were new hunters and wanted to get some pointers from a rising star. The hero was confused by his sudden popularity. A crowd of hunters surrounded him, all asking for advice. The guy didn't need all this fame for free. Yoichi watched all this. He smirked and thought that Toji was now a local celebrity. At the same time, the Fang boss was collecting a report from his subordinates on the elimination of Toji Nanase. Looking at his phone, he was greeted by the latest news, with the hero looking at him. Out of anger, the man smashed his smartphone. Why is this bastard still alive? The boss was indignant. The guys in jackets didn't know what to answer. The man asked where Kavanaugh was, to which he was told that they thought he had already returned. The boss took the bottle. It was clear that Kavanaugh would not return. What a mess, the man shouted, smashing a bottle over the new pet's head. He swung, and he thrust the sharp part of the bottle into Kobold's neck. The boss was furious. The subordinates watched the whole picture with fear. The man called on the squad to gather and finally rein in the hero. The jackets apologized to the boss and promised to deal with him immediately. Stamping his foot with all his might, he shouted at his subordinates not to ruin his reputation anymore. The man thought that if the boy was not afraid to go out in daylight, then he was not afraid of them at all. He also ordered to take more people with them and bring the hero's head. If they came empty-handed, they would have a hard time. This young man will know how to make fun of me, concluded the angry boss. Toji arrived at a new D-rank dungeon for his skill. He was surprised that the environment here was not like in the low dungeons, assuming that there would now be lava and snow everywhere. He became curious about what kind of monsters live here. Suddenly, as if on cue, monsters emerged from the lava lake. The hero was surprised to meet the hellhounds. They ejected clots of magma from themselves. Nanas's reaction did not fail him, and he jumped back from the attack in time. He activated his flying step, his speed increasing significantly. Having run to the other side of the bank, he managed to escape from the hounds. Taking a breath, he prepared to strike at them. A hail of swords came into the room. Many monsters received fatal damage. Toji rushed to finish off the rest. Body parts were scattered throughout the dungeon. The hero noticed that the monsters here were different from those he had seen before. From the remains of the Hellhounds, it was possible to create a 2-star Black Flame Wolf sword with an explosive power skill. Nanis was calculating how many more monsters he needed to kill here to improve his swords. He was glad to have a solo raid. He felt free on them. Eventually, he reached the dungeon boss. He walked through the door with anticipation. He was greeted by a huge lava lake. This time she was hotter. A huge hand emerged from the lava. Toji didn't expect the boss to come out from under the lava and in such a size. With one blow, he pushed the approaching hand away from himself. The owner of the limb began to emerge to the surface. A unique boss, the Flaming Shaitan, appeared before the hunter. As the rank increases, the bosses become stronger, the hero concluded. The worried monster was angry. The boss's impressive size only made Nanase more excited. He planned to have a lot of fun. The blazing Shaitan was larger than the other bosses. Without wasting any time, the monster summoned the Hellhounds. Toji took the lycanthrope's sword. He used the leadership skill, summoning several kobolds. The monsters grabbed each other in a fight. Having gotten rid of the interference, the hero went on the attack on the boss. The Flaming Shaitan collects magical energy into itself. The system reported that the monster had used the eruption skill and advised the guy to quickly retreat. A stream of lava rushed towards Nanase. This attack only makes it more difficult to get close to the boss. But the hero was ready for such difficulties. Using the flying step skill, he quickly began to climb up the monster's arm. While taking aim at the monster, he also used the title of Cutthroat. Shaitan was not one to be timid. His hand was already flying towards the hero. Toji didn't expect a counterattack. He barely managed to defend himself, but the lycanthrope's sword was shattered into pieces. The hero was not prepared for the sword to break so quickly. At that very moment, the summoned kobolds disappeared, and the hounds turned their attention back to the hunter. There was no choice. I had to summon a new sword. The boss did not calm down and directed the lava flows again. Nanase realized that Shaitan was striking twice at once. The hero cannot land normally due to the constantly flowing lava. An idea came into his head. He pushed aside the approaching hounds. He walked through each one with lightning speed. Thus, he managed to throw the annoying monsters into the lava. Toji caught the perfect moment to attack, and he delivered a powerful blow with his sword to the enemy's chest. The attack was not powerful enough to harm the monster. In that case, he decided to try using the Reptile Lord's sword he received in the dungeon for advanced training. The hero used the sword's ability, Radiation. He directed the ability beam at the boss's chest, and Shaitan screamed shrilly. The ability ate away part of the monster's skin, and the hero found a way to fight it. In an instant, the monster decided to dive into the lava. Access to it was now blocked. Toji lost his grip on the monster and flew straight into the lava. He decided to take a risk and took out the Warhammer sword from his inventory. Activating the King of Destruction skill, he struck the lake, giving access to the boss. The monster did not appreciate being discovered. Nanas mimicked Shaitan, noting his cowardice. The boss took a swing at the guy. The hero took out the reptile sword again, noting the monster's sluggishness. He remembered how Mei was able to hover with the help of a sword, which meant he could do it too. The hunter gathered all his will into a fist, gathering strength for the blow. The sword swing hit the boss. The attack went straight through the chest. The flaming Shaitan fell on the hellhounds that had emerged from the lake. Finally, the boss was defeated. Suddenly, the system began its report. Strangers were found in the dungeon, most likely awakened, possessing various skills. Toji was surprised by the system's message. Yoichi said that he would be the only one here. Perhaps the association made a mistake. He decided to go out and tell the other hunters that he had already cleared the dungeon. The door opened and a crowd of people entered. The hero wondered who it could be. They looked like employees of the association. People were coming closer and closer. The men in jackets and glasses never ended. They surrounded Nanis, pointing their guns at him. The hero was not surprised by the new circumstances. When I noticed a badge on one of them, everything fell into place. 6 fangs were already giving him no peace. He asked what their purpose in coming was. A team of experienced fang group hunters stood behind the jackets. If the boss hadn't sent them, they wouldn't even have gotten their hands dirty on him, the man began. The girl hinted that they needed the hero's head. He caused them a lot of trouble. Toji tensed. The hero noticed a tattoo with 5 fangs, which meant they were a step higher than Kavanaugh. It amused him that so many people were sent to capture him. The man explained that he had nothing personal. The boss's wishes were law for them. With a gesture, he ordered the hero to be killed. Nanis was angry. He would have to try hard to survive and return to his sister.